there's a new emphasis on cost optimization. It's not so much about cost as it is about optimization. And if you're thinking that's just wordplay, think again. Cost optimization is evolving beyond cost cutting to become a driver of growth. And to drive our conversation on cost optimization, let's welcome in Gartner Research Director Biswajit Mahapatra. Hi, I'm Scott Smith, and we've got Biswajit on the phone from his office in Dubai. Biswajit, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Scott. My pleasure.
We're here talking about cost optimization, and I think in the past when people hear that term, their first thing is cost cutting and slashing everything basically down to nothing. And yet, I know the emphasis is really changing toward what it's about. How has the cost optimization agenda evolved?
Well, Scott, you're absolutely right. Cost optimization is a favorite topic for CIOs and IT leaders. And since 2007, many organizations have been on a steady course of improving the cost efficiency of IT. However, in the age of digital business, cost optimization takes on new dimensions. The pressures to remain competitive and invest in digital initiatives is increasing across industries. However, digital initiatives embed information and technology in products and services and are thus joint IT endeavors. So cost optimization in the era of digital business means actually looking beyond IT and including the business cost initiatives as well. So on rethinking of the cost optimizations, organizations, are particularly those which are heavily impacted industries, which are looking to go the digital way, and they are the ones which should be looking holistically at the cost optimization initiative. Cost optimization in 2016 is a joint business and IT activity, as I said, and the organization stresses is to look at those digital initiatives at the same time, not losing the focus on the cost. Now, if you are a growth-oriented organization which is looking at growing its business, revenues are growing, you're going to look at cost optimization by moving more on the run side of business, and the cost you are going to save by moving more on the run side of business is what you're going to deploy in your digital initiatives. So cost optimization, even for an industry which is growing, is also very important. The agenda for cost optimizations in this year's program will actually help CIOs and IT leaders to work with business leaders how to actually design the entire cost optimization program and how does it align with the overall long-term objectives of the business. And our coverage of this topic includes the traditional cost optimizations part, as well as exploration of how IT can be used to further reduce business costs and drive that more important business side.
We really hit on something there that I know is a key focus now, which is make sure when you're optimizing your costs for the short term, you don't sacrifice the long term, especially as we move into digital business. How do I identify my best opportunities for IT cost optimization?
Actually, it is very simple. There are some standard ways of identifying the cost optimization opportunities. Practically, you can do this by two things, either by benchmarking or bringing in that transparency into the entire system. It has to be either of these ways. Now, if you look at how do you do using benchmarking, the use of comparative matrices is a critical element, in any cost optimization campaign. The use of benchmarks helps CIOs and IT leaders analyze their environments to discover new areas that may require additional funding or optimization, or to identify things that needs to be just left alone and they're doing good, and so you need to continue to do them as you are doing now. Now, for example, some of the key matrices which IT leaders and CIOs should be identifying as opportunities for IT cost optimization include, so starting off with, for example, what is your IT spending as a percentage of your revenue? Now, if an organization finds out that their IT spending as a percentage of revenue is higher than the cross-industry numbers reported, say, in the Gartner IT Key Matrices data report, it clearly shows that there is room for introspection. It definitely does not mean that all organizations need to achieve the same numbers as reported by the Gartner IT Matrices data. However, it does indicate how much on or off target an organization is from the global average for similar industries. Now, it also helps in setting up cost optimization goals for the IT department. For example, if as per Gartner IT key metrics data, the IT spending as a percentage of revenue should be around 3.5%, and if the organization is doing around, say, 4.15%, which actually means that there is scope at least to investigate, now how do you reduce this extra 15%? Now, the second thing once people have done this is to look at what is the distribution of IT costs by technology domains. Now, you have both the CapEx and OpEx part of looking at the expenditure which organizations do per technology. But the CapEx is generally handled by the budgeting cycle itself. So the focus is more on the OpEx side to look at what is the operating expenditure which organizations are incurring on different technological aspects. So, for example, the areas where we have seen traditionally where there is a lot of scope for cost optimizations are like data center, the end user computing, application portfolio support, help desk support, and so on and so forth. So traditionally, we have seen these are the areas where organizations do have a scope for improvements. So focus on those technological areas as to how you can optimize costs. And once you have done that, then you look at the per unit cost in those technology domains as to how does this per unit cost look like in your own organization compared to the global stuff. And this is one way of looking at it from the benchmarking perspective. The other way of looking at it is analyzing the problem areas. For example, if you take a lot of tickets which are being raised in day in, day out, you can understand that where the problem areas lie. And if you do an analysis of the problem areas, you may look at that certain service requests are taking a longer period of time. And it may be because of the technological issues there, skill set issues there, overall architecture issues there, which basically means the throughput of a particular service is taking more time and you're spending more time on it. So there's a cost incurred there. So you can also start analyzing from the tickets which have been raised as to where that there could be potential areas for cost optimization. And the last one is from a process review point of view, there are certain standard processes, especially on the run side of business, and you can compare those processes along with the process design itself, the time taken to completion of the process, and then look at where there could be redundancies, where there could be similarities, and where there needs to be some seamless integration across enterprises. And then you can look at how do you save costs even at the process point of view. So these are some of the ways where people can look at areas where there's potential for cost optimization.
Biswajit, I know one of the key terms that Gartner was really talking about with cost optimization now is the need for transparency. So how do we improve IT transparency to support cost optimization?
Very, very good and interesting point is because whenever we talk about transparency, many organizations have come back and said that, no, this is not applicable to us, or our culture does not allow cost transparencies, or stuff like chargeback and showback are not our cup of tea. But this is very similar as to pushing out something which we know is going to be a difficult question for us to answer. So basically, a good IT financial transparency is critical to support cost optimization. Organizations that traditionally have had high-level views into IT spending, say, for example, on the hardware or software or the skill sets and staffing, etc., often struggle to identify and communicate the impact of business reduction. Now, the immediate impact of this is if you are not able to have a transparent system and if you do not socialize where you are spending costs, then CEOs or the senior management or the others who are not a part of IT will never understand where you are spending money. And you'll be always looked upon as a department or a function which is just a cost center, right? So those organizations that have had transparency into IT costs by functional areas or by business processes or capabilities have been able to take more strategic decisions on cost optimization. If you do not have the transparency, you will have the senior management coming up and saying that, okay, reduce the cost by 15%. The impact of that cost is never realized. You go ahead and what you do, you start negotiating with your vendors, you start squeezing the contracts, you start stopping the procurement, you lay off certain people, and that's not having a good impact on the organizations. So depending on the type of transparency desired, various elements can be bundled. Thus, by increasing the maturity of the organization at the same time. Transparency element often includes stuff like IT budgeting, performance management, chargeback, cost allocation, measurement and benchmarking, investment planning, portfolio management, and so on and so forth. So with transparency, additional benefits can also include better demand management, identification of business values, the ability to run IT like business, better estimation capabilities, and overall better marketing of the IT capability to the general organization. And without transparency, the worst fear of enterprise stakeholders are often validated. With transparency, the IT organizations can change its desired role in business and enter into a very different value discussions that balance cost with the benefits of IT-enabled services.
We've touched on some through the course of our discussion so far on process and identification of areas for cost optimization and the transparency. But what are some of the emerging trends and technologies that can really help us to optimize costs? And as you mentioned, it's got to be a joint partnership between the business and IT. So to also show that business value to taking these steps.
Well, Scott, if you look at how some of the technologies have evolved, and when did they evolve? Some of the technologies like, say, cloud, they became popular actually around 2008 and 2009. And that's when we went through the economic turmoil. So when there are changes in the economic environment, when there are a lot more pressures on cutting costs and becoming more efficient, that's when we have seen that many new technologies crop up. Or many of these technologies which were already there is being looked upon in a different manner. So many of these technologies have actually come to light because of there's too much of focus on cost optimization or cost cutting or those kind of activities. So if I need to name a few of those technologies, stuff as I said like cloud-based services, virtual desktop infrastructure, which is VDI, virtualization, software-defined data center, software-defined everything, converged infrastructure, integrated systems, and all of these, if you look at the essence of this, all of these technologies is to do more with less. Use your current investments to the maximum potential, or defer your capex to an opex if that's what your objective is, or to look at taking the benefits of cost of capital and investing something now and not waiting for a year down the line when the cost of capital may increase. So if you look at these kind of technologies, they help you to achieve many of those things. Now, how you actually utilize these technologies and how do you implement them, and whether a certain technology is best suitable to you to help you at that point of time is the tricky part. So we have technologies which are there, which can be, if utilized properly, can lead to a lot of cost saving. For example, cloud, right? Cloud helps us to reduce costs because of economics of scale, economics of scope, standardized services. And now that's how cloud is marketed. But then we also have to be careful about which elements of cloud is actually suitable for us, which are kind of cloud offering, for example, hybrid cloud, public cloud, private cloud, government cloud, which of them or what is the combination of those technologies which would be helpful for us to actually bring down the cost. If we are not mindful of the fact, we may invest a lot in buying new platforms and technologies, reskilling ourselves, getting a whole new workforce, but not being able to get the maximum out of these technologies in terms of cost reduction.
Biswajit, thank you very much. Biswajit Mahapatra is a research director for IT systems, security, and risk issues at Gartner. He boasts more than 2 decades of experience in helping companies solve their infrastructure and operations challenges, including cost optimization. He joined us from his office in Dubai, and thank you for joining us for this conversation.